My goal as an effects artist is to show you something that there's no way you could have thought of yourself. Suddenly we had unleashed the writers' minds. They could show any story they wanted to. The whole business exploded, and we did indeed become rock stars.
Nick Taylor, welcome to Center Stage.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
Did you approach this film as the ultimate fan or as a filmmaker?
The fandom, I think, is what originally inspired me to want to make the movie. But then I realized, like, okay, don't make a fan documentary. I enjoy those. They're fun. But I did want this to be a narrative that could stand on its own 2 feet as a character study. You know, I wanted to make a movie that my father would have enjoyed, not because I necessarily have something to prove, although who doesn't? But he's not an effects fan. He's not a horror fan or anything like that. So that was kind of my litmus test.
Watch this.
It's more than just a makeup artist. They do practical effects.
Do you like to be scared at the movies? Well, apparently you're not alone. 80s horror was a big thing. It was a blast.
Horror is so hot, in fact, it's even gained a certain glamour.
You ever been watching a movie or commercial, you found yourself wondering how they do that? Steve Johnson creates the monster.
I was helping him promote one of his books a while ago, and I had a marketing background, and I basically did it for free. I was like, hey, I'd love the opportunity to work with you. I'm happy to pitch your book to the horror trades for free. And he said, okay, great. So for about a week, every night we'd get on the phone. He would tell me some story from his life and I would write it up. It's like, oh, here's how I made Slimer. And I was on all of these 8-ball after 8-ball of cocaine, and they kept changing and kept giving me, and I did so much cocaine, I was hallucinating John Belushi, because Slimer, one of his last notes that he got, this is that Slimer had to look like John Belushi after, it was like the night before the approval, and it was just this insanity, this coke-fueled insanity, and that story went really viral.
He's the architect of his own misfortune.
Steve was kind of in this other realm.
These drugs do make you better till they take you down.
One of the joys of working with him was he doesn't shy away from anything and will tell you the most debaucherous, insane, drug-fueled stories about his life and mistakes he made and bridges he burned. I mean, he basically tells you everything. It was a challenge to get him to be vulnerable on camera because he kind of is this Hollywood personality. And when we had the lights on him and we had the 2 reds on him, he would treat it kind of like a Johnny Carson interview where he kind of has to be on. So getting him to not be on was a challenge. But over time, you know, he got more used to having the cameras on him. And there were also moments when I would just go to his house and I would put my own camera on him and we would just talk for hours. And he was able to be more vulnerable during that time period. But yeah, he's very honest and very self-effacing, which was fun.
James Cameron is the only director that made me cry, but I did love him because he made my work better.
You have the work, and then you had the partying, which was phenomenal.
Steve's favorite word must have been like, this really can't be done. We got to figure out how to do it.
I just wanted to create fun stuff. Our stars are fading, and now technology wipes it out. Now we're the dinosaurs. You know, they put so much love, energy. The audience thinks it's done digitally anyway.
In the film, there's this part that it's very bittersweet where he gets a call to go up and meet this director who he'd worked with before. And when he gets there, he's looking at this house. It's a massive house. He's going, man, I wish I had some of that money. And you could just tell, because it opens, we see him and it looks like an apartment in North Hollywood or something. And so, but he gets there and then the director says, oh, it's not going to happen.
Right.
I'm like, why didn't you just tell me? Why do I drive over there? But it's kind of bittersweet because it's this whole notion of the displacement of the artist. And we see that happening now with AI kind of taking over parts of Hollywood and helping people be more creative, but then also helping people to not work, to be displaced from what they're doing. So I just thought that was kind of touching because here's someone that was well respected at what they do and they're talented and creative, but what they do now has gotten way too expensive when you can do everything on a computer.
Well, this movie was many years in the making, but I'm very happy with the timing because I feel like his overall story about an artist who obsessed over his craft and worked for decades to be one of the best. And to be an effects artist, to be an effects artist, one of the things I learned is you need to be 5 artists. You need to know how to sculpt. You need to know how to paint. You need to be super creative. You need to engineer things properly. You need to know aspects of biology. Like you need to know if you're making a werewolf, you need to know how the musculature under a wolf's thigh looks and works and moves. And you have to be Leonardo to do this work. And the obsession that it takes to do this at the level that Steve did it is extraordinary. So to observe his overall life story and see how CGI displaced him and a lot of other practical effects artists, I feel like that story couldn't have come at a better time, because obviously it's echoing a lot of anxieties that a lot of artists do have now, that AI could potentially replace them. But the thing I really wanted to make clear with this movie was that those arts that you do with your hands that you obsess over, they really, really, really fucking matter. Sorry, I hope I can curse on here.
Well, you just
they
did.
really, well, I just did. So hopefully you bleep it out if you need to. But those arts, I really hope that not just effects artists, but painters and sculptors aren't dissuaded by or aren't put off by AI. These arts still do matter, because your personal experience goes into your art. Every brushstroke, every single articulation on the clay that Steve sculpted was a part of him, came from his experience. And then people see that art and it resonates with them on a certain level. And it's humanity. The humanities are called the humanities for a reason. And that's why this type of art still really, really does matter. And with the case of CGI, yeah, it really disrupted the effects industry for a really long time. But then audiences got tired of it. There was a CGI digital fatigue where people were tired of seeing it and wanted practical effects. And because your mind's eye believes practical effects, you just can tell, you can feel it. If it's actual practical blood, if somebody actually built that werewolf versus did a CGI werewolf, no matter how good the CGI gets, you're on a very visceral subconscious level. You can feel that is real, so to speak, or at least in the third dimension. Personally, I don't think AI will ever get us to that point. At least I hope not. But I just really wanted to make it clear that these arts really, really do matter, because they move people, and I don't think AI can ever do that.
Felt like I had to prove myself because I wasn't good at sports. I had this one thing that I could do, that making the best monster I could made me kind of belong. Rick Baker, my hero, he had just done the Cantina sequence for Star Wars. He gave me his phone number and he said, listen, if you ever make it out to Hollywood, give me a call. I loaded up my car, hit the road. We're just a bunch of kids. We don't know how to do this because it's probably not possible in the first place.
They come out of the woodwork. They're so strange. If they didn't have this thing to do, they'd probably be working in a gas station.
We provided a lot of work for the special effects guys.
How do you see yourself as a filmmaker and as a creative in this new landscape that we're finding ourselves in, where AI is there, and just how are you navigating this landscape?
Well, I think it's never been a better time to be a horror filmmaker. When you look at 2 months ago when we had Obsession and we had Backrooms just blow the doors off of the industry again. I mean, it is extraordinary and exceptional, but it keeps happening. It happened with Blair Witch. It happened with Paranormal Activity. I mean, there are all these little horror movies that could. And I think the indie nature of these movies really contributes to their success, I think. And we're talking about practical effects. Curry Barker is a big practical effects person, was fairly insistent that a lot of what they did was practical, and what they couldn't do practically, they would enhance with CGI. There's, I think one of the moments when Nikki is in the bedroom and she's in the corner, they did a practical effect on her face to give her an uncanny valley sensibility. And it worked so well because you're not sure if she's got a prosthetic on her. They easily could have done that with CGI, but it probably wouldn't have worked as well. Mm-hmm. And with Kane Parsons, Backrooms, they built the majority of those sets, which is why that you feel that movie. You feel the time and space and dimension of that movie. And I mean, I think there were many reasons both of those movies were successful, but I think that the practical nature of both of them contributed a lot to it. Because I think that with AI on the rise, there's going to be a lot of AI slop, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think people are just like they got tired of CGI. People are going to get tired of this AI generated stuff. And maybe like really young generations could sit through a feature length AI, whatever. But I don't think most people are going to want to. I think they're going to want to see what human beings created, because there's a viscera to it. There's something like Obsession, you can feel that movie. My leg was bouncing after I saw it. And I don't have restless leg syndrome, but my leg was shaking after I saw it. I saw it at the Overlook Film Festival. Rick Baker was in the audience, which was really cool. But in any case, so these are movies that you feel, and I think that there's a real hunger for them. So I think as far as horror and directing right now, I mean, it's open season. And I think it's that smaller indie handcrafted nature that people want, that audience are responding to. And it might be a response to all of the sort of digital and CGI related stuff people have been inundated with for such a long time. Obsession beat a Star Wars movie. It's incredible.
Wow. What was the most shocking thing that you discovered that you didn't know about Steve Johnson?
I think the volume of drugs that he was able to put away was pretty shocking.
You have the work, and then you had the partying, which is phenomenal.
There's a story that Steve told. He got his eyes done when I think he was in his early 40s, and they like cut out this part. They had to basically, to do this procedure, they have to cut your eyelids off, which is freaky because you can't close your eyes, but you're under anesthesia. But he was doing so many drugs that his drug tolerance was so high that the anesthesia wore off halfway through the surgery, and he woke up on the operating table with no eyelids, which is absolutely horrifying because he had such a tolerance. And somehow he didn't tell the doctor, because you don't want to tell your doctor that you're doing like insane amounts of opiates. So yeah, when I heard that, that was a pretty shocking story.
No, it's like you go to the doctor. So you're filling out the list that said, how much alcohol do you drink? and then you say, well, a week or a month,
or just this morning. Yeah. But that was fairly shocking that he could do that to himself and then still go to work. That was the insane thing.
Yeah.
The work didn't falter. I mean, yeah, he made some bad business decisions, I think, and I don't think the alcohol and the drugs helped, but he was never not working. It never seeming. He's a very functional addict.
What, when you look at the film, what do you think is the overall message to this movie?
Well, there were a few initial threads that really drew me to want to tell this story. One of which was I was very inspired by Steve's story in the very beginning. He was this young kid who grew up in Texas and through a chance encounter meets Rick Baker, who looks at his work that he did at 16 and says, if you ever make it out to Hollywood, give me a call. And then the day after he graduates high school, Steve hightails it to Los Angeles without a plan other than to knock on Rick Baker's door, without money, without any resources. And then he makes it to the top of the industry. I wish that I was like that when I was 17 years old. I wish I just said, I'm going all in, instead of coming to filmmaking in my 30s. So there was a sort of Brett Morgan, one of my favorite documentarians, says that all documentary is autobiography. Like you're telling your story through somebody else's story, which you don't realize you're doing it at the time. But I vicariously did want to have done that, wanted to pursue my passion at a young age because I knew what I wanted to do with it as a kid. And so did Steve. But Steve went for it with everything he had on day one. So I wanted there to be somewhat of an inspirational message also. But I think later it becomes a cautionary tale, partially about drugs, but I think also about unchecked emotions and, not caring. I think there's a bit of a self-care message here psychologically, like the ambition and the work ethic is incredible. But I think if the foundation isn't strong, it'll crumble eventually, which is also part of it. But so I guess in terms of the message, I think follow your passion is a really, really big one, because that I was very inspired by how Steve followed his passion, and it was a kind of obscure passion, but he followed it and he did incredibly well. But it's also, there's a measure of don't do drugs, kids. It's also sort of one of the other messages as well.
It really is extraordinary how all these kids had such an impact.
I don't think Steve ever got the credit that he really deserved for a lot of things he did.
I'm going to make some of the greatest movies ever, and then I'm just going to slam it in a brake train into a brick wall and jump from the smoking wreckage. This movie's going to ruin what's left of my ragged career.